Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Women on Top podcast. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and with over 15 years of business experience, I became truly passionate about finding ways to support and hear from way more women. And what we know to be true is that women thrive when they are in their favorite position, on top in business, in relationships, in personal growth, and on top in being real and authentic to who the hell they are. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy the Women on Top podcast. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Women on Top, everybody. And today I have a real treat, I feel like, for you. I have a beautiful woman sitting in front of me named Amy Natalie, and I just recently really connected with her during an event that we both got the opportunity to speak at. And while she was speaking and talking to us about feminine and masculine energy, I just was so captivated by her content, and we since connected. And so I am so excited that she's here sitting with me. So a little bit of background on Amy is that she really specializes and is really gifted at helping women to become and to discover, I think, their most authentic and confident and really like their self-expression, like really help them unearth their self-expression. And I feel like, she has this powerful mission to ignite women into their feminine power. And this really helps us live out in a way of like having more freedom and really tapping into these pleasure centers in different areas of our life that I don't think we normally talk about, which I find so interesting. Amy's also the author of The Feminine Way, which I'm so blown away that you have this book. And then you also are the host of the Feminine Frequency podcast, which is awesome too. So she's doing a lot of good work out there. And then she's got over a decade of coaching experience. So just a ton of knowledge and wisdom coming to you today. I'm so excited. So Amy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I love your energy, and I'm so excited to connect with your community because what I know to be true is that the people who are drawn to your podcast are drawn to you, and that they're really just like this reflection and extension and like, yeah, women who are really committed to their growth and their empowerment. So it really feels like a gift and an honor to be here today, connecting with everyone and getting to drop in with you too.
Yeah, I love it. I love your energy too. Like I feel as though you're somebody when you speak, I immediately like get grounded, more grounded. I feel like I need you more in my life because I tend to like vibe really high and spin around and have a lot of energy. I'm curious just to kind of get us started and get us kicked off. Like I really want to know where this all came from. Like where did your love of teaching women about themselves, specifically in their like feminine power, where did this all come from?
Mm. Yeah, I feel like the journey of feminine awakening happens in these different layers. And so like my awakening and my transformation didn't happen overnight. It's really been a span of, over 10 years of really deep inner work. And I started this journey because I struggled with my mental health and my physical health. I was in my mid 20s and I didn't know at the time, but I was operating very heavily in my masculine energy. I was constantly thinking and doing and being productive and pushing and forcing. And I was working out super hard and I was like building my business. And I just didn't really know how to listen to my body. And that's one of the biggest things with feminine energy is learning how to listen to the wisdom and the signals that our body is always teaching us. So that includes our intuition, that includes our emotions, that includes like our inner power, inner voice, our truth, our authentic expression. So at the time, to paint the picture for you, I really struggled with negative body image. I had a really poor relationship with my body. I was very critical of myself. I didn't like how I looked. I grew up as a dancer and as an
Mhm.
athlete. And I think that there was just a lot of comparison and a lot of messaging that we receive from external places. So there was this negative self-talk about my body, but then there was also this negative self-talk around my self-worth of feeling like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't cool enough, I wasn't creative enough. Like all of these reasons why I felt like I wasn't going to be successful. And so it was interesting because if you looked at my life from the outside, it looked pretty picture perfect. I had gone down the traditional pathway of success that society prescribes for you. I got married in my mid 20s. We bought a house. I was running my own business, so I wasn't working in corporate. My dad's an entrepreneur, so I kind of followed in that path. But I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And internally, I was really struggling. I was depressed, I was
Mm-hmm.
disconnected, I was depleted, and I was really anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was through this experience of really giving my power away to my thoughts and to these limiting beliefs and really having this dark night of the soul and be feeling so stuck and feeling so empty and like kind of gaslighting my experience like, oh, but everything on the outside is perfect. Like I've done all the things. Why am I not happy? And sometimes people call this a midlife crisis. This is also often what we call spiritual awakenings, where we go into these dark nights. And I just had this moment where I had tried so many things. I had tried therapy. I had, been on medication for my mental health. I had tried changing my diet. There were so many things I did. And eventually I just like had this moment where I surrendered. And I just was in the bathtub crying, feeling exhausted. And I was just like, there has to be a reason for all of this. Like, I know that I'm here for more, and I know that I'm not meant to be unhappy. And I just like prayed for the first time and was like, God, show me what to do because I'm done. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. And really from that point on, I deepened my connection to my spirituality. I started to learn more about how to embrace my feminine energy. And before I knew it, I was listening to my intuition, which was telling me that both the lifestyle and my marriage and my business were out of alignment,
Mm-hmm.
and that I needed to really start listening to myself and start creating a life that felt good on the inside instead of one that looked good on the outside. And really that's led me to a completely different path, which is phenomenal. And we'll be talking more about that today.
Yeah. What a great story because I think this is why I love this platform and just having women share their story is that we all kind of connect to it in some way, shape, or form. I feel like so many women listening are going to be like, yes, I understand that on so many levels, maybe not the exact same story, but just a lot of, resonance. So you are in the bathtub and you pray to God and you're like, okay, I'm done. I surrender. What do you got for me? And then what happens? Because you kind of say that, and then you were on this journey of self discovery and you learn more about your intuition. But I want to go a little deeper there.
Yeah. Yeah. So at that time, I had been waking up at 3 a.m. with horrible anxiety, like my heart beating out of my chest, like racing thoughts, just like this cortisol spike in the morning, stress hormone running through my body. And meanwhile, I had my husband at the time and my dog sleeping in our room. And so I'm like tiptoeing out to our guest room where I have my meditation pillow. And I had tried meditating before. I had done a lot of yoga, but I was never consistent with my practices. And honestly, like this experience of having so much anxiety, like kind of forced me. I like felt like I had no choice. So I would take out my meditation pillow and I would sit there, and I used guided meditations at first and then started trying silent meditations. And I started to quiet the voice of my mind and quiet the voice of what everyone else wanted for me. And I started to listen to myself. And what my inner voice was telling me was that this marriage and this lifestyle isn't what I want. It's all been for everyone else, making everyone else happy. And the question that came through during that meditation was, are you going to keep trying to make everyone else happy at the expense of your own happiness? Like, this is what happened when I got really quiet. And as I was meditating, I started to have a lot of signs and synchronicities throughout my day. I started meeting people and like reading things in books, like the exact messages that I needed to hear, listening to stories of women who had gone through a divorce and then like really found a partner that was really aligned for them and created successful businesses and followed their path, and how quickly everything shifted for them. So This was like the hardest decision by far that I've ever made. And it wasn't just a decision to leave my marriage. And I was 27 years old. It was a really challenging decision to make, but it was also a decision to leave the version of myself behind, like let that version of me die so
Mm,
that who I really am could come through. And it was in that choice point that I was like, I get to create the life that lights up my soul. I get to, like, no matter what happens, no matter who judges me, no matter who's upset with me, no matter who comes along with me for this journey, that I have myself and that I'm going to create the life that I want to create. And from there, it was really just like trusting every single moment of like continuing to come back to myself, continuing to come back to my practices, and starting to surround myself with other people who had similar beliefs, including mentors, including, women's groups, like making sure that I was surrounding myself with positive influences and that I felt supported.
hmm. Yeah. I love kind of how you're illustrating this because I think it's also really important to highlight for people, at least it has been for me, that you don't just become like it's not like a flip a switch that just goes on. It's not that easy to really come home to yourself. I feel like hopefully we're always doing that to some extent. Also, I just feel like it can be painful to like say goodbye to your old self. So I'm curious, like, how do you do that? How do you let that old part of you, quote unquote, die in order to welcome in the new? Because I hear that makes sense in my head, but then I'll wake up tomorrow and be doing the same things. So, yeah, what's kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a concept that I really love to teach is around the feminine cycles of death and rebirth. And the understanding about this is that we are cyclical beings and that we grow in cycles. And so in our minds, we think, oh, I'm just going to like get to my next goal and get to my next accomplishment. But really, what happens is that we have these times where things feel challenging or where we are living out of alignment with ourselves. And in order to get to that next place, we have to let the parts of ourselves that are no longer authentic to fall away.
Mm,
This could be different patterns such as people pleasing,
yeah.
playing small. It can be perfectionism. It could even be letting go of relationships or people. Maybe you have people in your life who are drinking and partying, and that those are no longer in alignment with your values.
Mhm.
It's really about, starting to set boundaries and being willing to say no to the things that don't really feel like a full yes for you anymore.
Mm,
And it happens with all of these little choice points, all of these decisions. And going through a death cycle like this, and I honestly feel like every single month with my menstrual cycle there's something every month that I let go of, right?
mm,
I go into this like kind of darkness where I meet these parts of myself, and I'm in kind of like that hormonal space where it's like, okay, like this feels really challenging, and then I come out the other side and I feel so much more clear and more aligned, and I can take the wisdom and the lessons that I learned when I was going through that death process and come out the other side stronger and more empowered. So it's not like a literal step-by-step process. To me, this
mm,
is an energetic process. And what I want to share with the listeners is that we have to let ourselves fully go into that, surrender into the darkness. We are so afraid of feeling our feelings, of feeling the pain, and so we avoid, we numb, we distract. When you do that, then we don't really fully release and we hold on to these parts of ourselves. And then we stay in this, like, I used to feel like I was in this kind of gray zone where I wasn't super happy, but I also wasn't like super depressed, but my life was just like blah, like
yeah.
autopilot.
Right.
And so when we let ourselves fall apart, when we learn how to alchemize our emotions, really go into that darkness and feel that, then we can create space
Mm,
for alignment, for clarity, for happiness, for joy, for pleasure. But if you're not letting yourself feel those emotions, you're also not going to like come out the other side with that wisdom, with that insight, because you're numbing and avoiding what's there.
Mm.
So that's kind of like the deeper process, is learning how to be with your emotions. And the key to that is really bringing self-compassion and developing your inner nurturer or your inner mother. Because if you're feeling emotions that are uncomfortable for you to feel, and then you're judging yourself, you're like, why am I feeling
Yeah.
like this? I shouldn't feel this way. I should be over this right now.
Oh my
What's wrong with me?
gosh.
You're not actually going to let yourself feel your emotions. And then they're going to stay stuck in your body. They're going to stay stuck
Mm.
in like your energetic field. So this is a big part of the death cycle, is letting yourself actually feel and let yourself be messy. Like as women, we like to have it all put together and pretend that everything's okay and we've got everything figured out. And it's like, yeah, but we're also human. And like the more we can really embrace our full feminine range, our full range of emotions, the
Yeah.
more that we can then experience that bliss and that inner peace.
Yeah, I'm so excited that you just added this piece of like you have to embrace the darkness. Recently, like only in the last like year or so, I've really been kind of leaning into that a little bit, even when because I'm big on helping women share their voice and their story. And I feel like the juice is always in the darkness and it's always in like the shadows that they don't want to share. But that's always like where the power is. And a lot of our connectivity is based on these experiences that we've been through that we kind of shame ourselves for. So I love that you shared that as being like part of the whole, piece of who we are. So I want to kind of get into like what is this thing of what is feminine power? Like what is our feminine energy? Because I think, I mean, I don't know as much about this nearly that you do, but I also am like anticipating that there's women out there who are kind of like me, who are a little more of like the go-getter. We tend to probably lean into the masculine side a lot more. And they're a little like skeptical maybe of like, what is this? And it sounds interesting, but I need to like know more information. So yeah.
Yeah, so we're living in a really interesting time in history where, we've gone through this feminist movement where women have the ability to work, to create the life they want, to make money, and that's really beautiful. However, now women are in the cycle of, okay, I'm doing all the things and I'm unhappy, or I'm doing all the things and it's not sustainable because I'm hitting burnout. And so it's like we've been trying to achieve success in the masculine way, and it's not working for us as women. And we're trying to like compete with men when they have a whole different hormone system, that we as women have a different hormonal system. And so if we can learn how to create success in our own way, which is a way that is sustainable, that is nourishing, that is allowing us to stay connected to ourselves and living from our heart, like that's a whole different path. So when you hear the word feminine, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that term itself. It's like we can think that the feminine is weak, or she's lazy, or too sensitive, too emotional, too much, and too sexual, like whatever you have your conceptions, because we all in our society have been taught this about the feminine,
Yeah.
about women. However, the feminine is not just about these like kind of surface level qualities. The feminine has a lot of beautiful gifts to offer that really can help us to share our own talents and our own wisdom with the world. So some of those gifts are our intuition, right?
Mm,
Really having that sixth sense, that intuitive guidance of that inner knowing. Our feminine energy also helps us tap into our emotions. And some people think, oh, tapping into your emotions means that you're weak, or being vulnerable means that
mhm.
you're weak. And it's like actually feeling your emotions takes a lot of courage. And
Yeah.
when you know how to feel your emotions, then you'll stop reacting to them and stop projecting them onto other people, so that you don't have these big outbursts of being like bitchy or reactive or
Mhm.
all these things that women can get criticized for. So it's like when you learn how to alchemize those emotions, you can use them for your power. You can use them to express yourself, to share your needs, to share your boundaries, to share your desires.
Yeah.
And then people can actually meet you in that, and you have way more effective communication.
Hmm.
Um, I like to think of the feminine as an energy. So it's not like, oh, if you're connected to your feminine, you're like dressed in flowy clothes, or you have to look a certain way, or you have to be super sexual or sensual. Like, it can be that if that's your authentic expression. But really, to me, like, the feminine is about being connected to your body. It's about being connected to your heart. It's about being connected to nature. It's about being connected to other women. It's this essence that you carry. So it's not like, oh, if I'm in my feminine at work, then I'm going to be weak. It's actually like, no, like when I show up and I know who I am and I feel confident in who I am and I trust myself to make decisions and I'm listening to my emotions, I can actually show up in a more powerful way than when I'm ignoring these really important aspects of myself. So that gives a little bit of a picture around the feminine. And I really want to highlight that it's not about only being in your feminine energy. And I think that's another big
Right.
misconception that especially overachievers and like, or not just even overachievers, women who have big goals and dreams, ambitious women, they're like, but I don't want to give up like my success. And the thing is, you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's about learning how to use both of these energies, your masculine energy and your feminine energy together so that you can create sustainable success.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is such a good conversation. I feel like everything that you cracked open about the feminine is so true. And it's things like I firsthand have dealt with, even like when you were saying if you don't like own your emotions, it will come out as like passive aggressive or just in completely different like explosive ways. And I've noticed that too from like relationships and things like that I've been in. And since having started to get a better understanding of myself and like really appreciate myself, that's really changed a lot. So that's interesting that you say that. And not saying that that's like completely resolved, but I feel a lot more in myself now than I did years ago. But man, I'm still working on it. So I'm curious also if you can kind of highlight for the listeners, what are some like maybe telltale signs or symptoms of like maybe being unbalanced in the feminine and masculine.
Being really depleted, low energy is a big one. Feeling burnt out, always feeling stressed out, feeling like you're living from your to-do list all of the time, like you don't give yourself permission to rest. You don't actually take breaks. You're constantly doing things. If you feel like you have a hard time turning off at the end of the day, right? That's a big one, meaning like you're really stuck in your masculine energy. If you feel like you're overthinking constantly in your head, that's you're in your masculine energy. And then some of the long-term side effects of being disconnected from your feminine energy are, chronic pain, because when we're not listening to our bodies are always speaking to us and they're giving us little pings. They're telling us, hey, we need you to slow down. Hey, I need you to nourish me. Hey, I need more sleep. I need more movement. But we're not listening. Eventually, that shows up as autoimmune conditions, lower fertility rates. It shows up as chronic headaches. It shows up as difficulty losing weight. Like these are all huge health issues that women are experiencing more and more. And it's not like they just pop up overnight. These are things that in time, as you don't address them and as you ignore them, this is the kind of like end result of it. And I've also really found for women, feeling chronic depression and chronic anxiety is often a deeper signal that you're not listening to yourself. You're not living in alignment. You're not honoring yourself. You're not respecting yourself. Like
Mm.
it's really a symptom. And yes, I just want to say like there is definitely can be a chemical, like biochemical component to depression and anxiety. And I'm not saying that people don't ever need medication, or like I highly recommend speak with your doctor. And what I've found is that these are some of the underlying, symptoms that are not addressed when we're so disconnected from our feminine energy.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, a lot of those, I was like, I definitely am somebody who loves a to-do list and I live from that place often. And I am an overthinker. I sometimes am like, oh, I love to just live in my head. It's one of my favorite places to be. And recently, actually, I have had a couple conversations with a couple women who are kind of like mentors to me, and they both have shared like, go and spend some time just doing something you enjoy. And I got to do that yesterday, and it was like, wow, I needed that so much just to be at the beach and like have lunch and not be working on something to just be a little unplugged. But it's challenging. I mean, it felt really hard for me. So
Yeah, it is challenging. And trust me, I love my to-do list. I'm very much a go-getter. I've been an entrepreneur for over 11 years. Like I hear you.
yeah.
And one of the things that I'd love to offer is that really starting to reframe our idea that, rest is not productive. That's
Mhm.
what we believe. And when we can start to see, oh, when I actually take breaks and when I take care of myself, it allows me to be more focused. It allows me to be more present. It allows me to be more creative. And I actually get more done
Yeah.
when I'm taking care of myself, when I'm giving myself that moment of pleasure or of joy. Like it allows me to show up even better, be more productive. And it took me a long time to learn that because I've burnt out in my business several times. I've gotten to that place where like I'm not doing anything that I really enjoy. And there's only so long that you
Yeah.
can live in that place. And when you can really have the real life example of, oh, I took a break and I actually feel less stressed. And now I feel like I have more clarity and I can show up more productively when I'm actually at work. Then you start to build evidence and teach yourself that, oh, actually, this is helpful. This is not taking away from my goals. It's actually helping me to reach my goals more effectively.
Yeah.
It's a
I feel
hard one
like
to wrap your head around. Yeah.
yeah. It's kind of like I'm kind of redefining what success means for myself too. And that's a piece of it is having this pleasure of enjoying life. That's really been like forefront in my mind recently is just because I was getting burned out too. Honestly, I was trying to think of all the different things I could offer in like a business sense and just thinking I had to be so focused all the time and do this like I don't know, David Goggins, like wake up super early, like grind until the end of the day. And that does not work for me. So I'm really grateful for these voices like yours and others who are helping me understand that this is like a good way to activate some of that creativity because I will say I had some new ideas that came through this weekend and that was really great as well as just how I feel today even like after having the experience of being more rested yesterday. I just kind of want to even keep going with this idea because I think, I was messaging you about like leadership and women in those types of roles. So I think it's still challenging for our corporations and big business and all of that to understand the value of having feminine power and feminine presence. So, how can we start to shift some of that? Because I feel like you already said, like feminine kind of has this like bad rap to it a little bit.
Yeah. So corporate and big companies, the truth is that they're founded upon very patriarchal, masculine oriented ways of working, right? And it's really a lot about the bottom line. It's about the productivity. It's about the numbers. And there is definitely stigma around, you need to have this professional persona that you wear, but then you need to be a different version. Then you can't be yourself at work, essentially, is what I see a lot of. And
Yeah.
you can't express your needs and you can't share your boundaries and all of that. And so what I will say is that it is a challenge, right? It's not
Mhm.
impossible, but it is a challenge. And something that I want to bring to this conversation is that instead of trying to prove or instead of trying to convince people that these feminine qualities are powerful and beneficial, the word that comes to me, which is a huge part of my work, is embodiment. It's like being that version of yourself, when you are feeling radiant, when you are feeling energized, when you're feeling creative, when you're feeling connected, people are going to be magnetized to that. People are going to feel that. So
Mm,
you're not trying to change the system. It's like do the inner work to change your frequency, to change your energy, which is like really, everything I teach in my book. It's there's a lot to it, but it's like nourishing yourself outside of work,
mm,
changing yourself on the inside of how you relate to yourself and then bringing that to the workplace. People are going to feel inspired by you. People are going to be like, whoa, like, I want you to speak at this meeting. I want your opinion on this. Like, you're going to be respected without having to prove it. People will feel it. And
mm,
I promise you, this is the shift that happens. It's the inner work that then people like, I used to have people come up to me after I started doing this work around feminine embodiment, and they're like, you're glowing. Like, what are you doing? Like, I feel so connected to you. And I just met you and your
mm,
voice and your energy. And it was nothing that I was doing differently externally. It was who I was being.
mm.
So we're not trying to change the system. We
Yeah.
don't need to prove anything. It's let's come home to yourself and really start to value and respect yourself. And when you do that, everything outside of you will start to reflect that.
I really appreciate that perspective. I think there's so much more power in that and what you just said of being the embodiment, attracting people into your circle because of that, elevating your frequency. Like, I love how you put all of that, especially just because I think people automatically go to how can we resist something? And I feel like the resistance is never where the magic is created. So I really, that really hit home for me. I guess I'm thinking about have been discovering what feels really restful and in like is something that I find joy in.
Mhm.
For maybe somebody listening who's like, I don't even know, does it just mean I need to just sleep more? How do I like really come home to myself or re-energize or come back into my feminine power? What are maybe some of those things? Or maybe what are some of the questions this woman should be asking herself to discover that?
Yeah, I resonate with that so deeply. When I first started doing this work, like it was really hard for me to identify what does bring me joy, what brings me pleasure, what feels good, because I was so used to doing what other people wanted me to do or just ignoring what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, I think this is a great question, and I would say that it's a discovery where we get to experiment and try things on, and it can be really simple. I want to remind you, like, this does not need to be complicated. Doesn't need to be another thing that you're adding to your to-do list.
Mhm.
And it can be in these small explorations. So for some people, it might be spending time in nature. For some people, it might be dancing and moving their bodies. For some people, if you really like to be in water, you might like to take a bath or, get out into a river or get out into the ocean. For some people, it's just like having some quiet time in the morning and drinking a cup of tea or drinking your coffee without any distractions. It really is connecting with what feels good for me.
Mm,
And again, that's an exploration. It can be little things like starting to have fresh cut flowers in on your desk at your office. It can be using essential oils to help to connect with, different scents that allow you to feel relaxed. There is so many little moments that whether it's like watching the sunset or putting your feet on the grass or just like taking some deep breaths, like it's endless. And I think because it's so simple, we can make it complicated. We're like, oh my God, but which one should I do?
right.
And am I doing it right? And it really comes down to what is it that feels good for you. And for some people, exploring like what brings them joy, it can come down to like, what did I like doing when I was a little kid? Before I had all this responsibility, before I had all these rules, before I was trying to be who other people wanted me to be, fit into this society or in this mold, what did I like to do? What did you like to do when you were younger? And start to reconnect with your little girl, your inner child of what brought her joy, because it's likely that that part of you has just been dormant. And when we revisit that, it naturally comes back to life.
Yeah. I like that you also brought that up of like go back to what you used to do because we put on so many masks and just strap on so much stuff throughout our lives that we often forget like what do I even like? And so I'm curious for yourself. What would you say to your younger self, like younger Amy, just knowing what you know now, being where you are today?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say to her that you are lovable exactly as you are, and that your sensitivity and like your emotions and your yeah, like your essence is welcomed. Like it's all welcomed here. And just
Mm,
really giving her that permission to be all of herself and to know that she doesn't need to be anything different in order to be loved.
yeah, that
Mhm.
was so beautiful. And um, I feel like that is something similar that I would say to myself. So thank you for sharing that. Like that was such a, I could just feel that from your heart, and going on the journey that you've been. I, I think you've just had such a transformation, and I'm so interested to see what is coming for you as well, and how can the listeners get some more information because I know they're just going to be hooked after this episode. So I'd love to have you share.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, the best place to find all of my offerings is on my website, which is amynatalieco.com. A lot of women love my podcast, which is the Feminine Frequency Podcast. We have over 320 episodes there. So, that's a place where, like, if you're like, hey, I love this episode, I want to dive deeper, that's a really great place to go. I also have a group coaching program and one-on-one coaching. My group coaching program is called the Multidimensional Woman, and I run that a couple of times a year. And it's really the journey, the process to help you to come back home to your authentic self and to develop the confidence and the self-trust to create a life that really feels good, a life that creates that freedom and authentic expression. And then lastly, in next year in January 2025, I'm hosting an in-person retreat in Costa Rica. It's called the Radiance Retreat, and it's for female leaders and coaches and healers, anyone in really who finds themselves in their masculine energy and who wants to come home to their feminine radiance and their aliveness and really take that space to reconnect with yourself and with nature and with other women. So you can find all of that on my website, but there's a lot of really amazing things coming up. So
Yeah.
that's what's happening.
I love it. Oh my gosh. I love that you're doing the in-person retreat. I've never been to Costa Rica, so I might need to check that out myself. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate again just like everything that you shared, and to everybody listening, like go find more about her, go find more about Amy. This is for anyone, literally all of the female leaders walking this planet feel like need to go and just, tap into more of that. I think that space that we are a little unaware of and haven't really nourished probably in a really long time. And so I think it's really powerful that you've been able to come on this episode. So, as a last final thing, I've been doing something where I've asked the last guest to leave a quote for the next guest, or just not even a quote, but just like a piece of advice or something they want to leave the next guest, not knowing who it is. And so, one of the pieces of advice for you from the last gal I interviewed, which is really, she, hesitated. I remember her saying this, and she was like, gosh, this seems so simple and so silly, but she's like, I'm going to say it anyway. She's like, what's coming to me is just that you are safe to be you, and that you are safe to just be all of you here and now. And so, I think I'm just going to let that land for you and see what you would like to leave for the next guest, not knowing who it is.
Mm. Oh, I love this. This is so fun. Okay. So what I would love to offer is that, let's see what wants to come through. I like to take a moment to tune in. So let's
Yeah.
see. Hmm. Yeah, that your voice matters, that your voice holds a unique frequency, it holds a unique code that is here to make a difference in the world. And so, in being here, sharing your voice on this podcast, like you are living in your truth, you're living in your magic. Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
good. I feel
yeah,
like I always need to hear whatever the beauty of this is that like yes it's maybe kind of fun for listeners or guests but for me I'm getting so much benefit out of hearing these pieces of advice come through because I feel like I am needing to hear it in one way shape or form, so I really appreciate that what you just shared.
yeah. I'd love to leave your listeners with a gift
Yes,
because I know that this is like, yeah, the podcast is a really good starting point, but I want to leave them with a practice that they can take home with them, if that's okay.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I have a guided morning practice that's an audio guide that you can listen to in your car. You can listen to when you wake up in the morning. And this practice is designed to help you to connect with your feminine energy and your confidence. So I'll share the link with Valerie, and then you'll be able to access that recording. I think that would be something that's like really a tangible practice that you can start to really feel what it's like to connect with your feminine energy.
That's so awesome. Yeah. So I will be including all of the links in the show notes, of course. And then for anyone who wants more information, I think I'll share the link as well, just in a couple different ways. So folks have access to that because that's really powerful. And just thank you so much for being willing to share that. I feel like having something that's guided is super helpful for me. So I'm blown away and just thank you. That is so generous to have that. And thank you, honestly, for being here. This has been amazing to get time with you. I feel again like I get rerouted and like grounded differently, and just being able to listen to you, I can definitely tell like your passion for this, but more of like this is such a service that you're doing. I feel like sharing this information, sharing your heart with other women, especially. And I just feel like this is a time that women need like this information and this content more now than ever before. So thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thanks again for having me on.
Thank you for tuning into the show today. And before you go, I just have one quick favor to ask of you. There is a really simple way that you can help support me and help support this show, and that is to hit that follow button on whatever app you're listening to the show on. I'm trying really hard to level up the content and deliver unique value and amazing guests, and just hitting that follow button is the magic that will help continue to empower that. And remember that the world deserves to hear your voice and your stories, and you deserve a place at the top.